Welcome to the Total Soccer Show's USMNT Weekly. It's your regular fix of men's national team news, analysis and opinion. Today, we're building out the USMNT depth chart position by position to see where we stand ahead of next summer's lovely FIFA Jamboree. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today on this day of all day, happy Turkey Day to you, Taylor Rockwell.
Hello, Ryan Bailey. Lovely to be here. We're obviously recording this on Thanksgiving morning, so I'm taking a break from doing all the cooking and cleaning and doing all the prep to spend this time talking about the USMNT depth chart. How do you not do that on Thanksgiving? Answer is, I don't know.
Indeed. We are very committed to this here podcast, Taylor. That's what we've learned. Graham Ruthven, how are you? Happy Thanksgiving. Have you opened your Thanksgiving presents? Have you seen the Thanksgiving elf? Anything else?
Hello, Ryan Bailey. Yes, happy Thanksgiving to you as well. I did the Christmas Carol thing of opening the window. You boy, what day is it? Thursday. All right, well, that's...
And they didn't swear at you
Scotland.
either. That's impressive.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the problem, is that the concept of giving thanks in Scotland is just still a couple years off.
That's the thing holding it back.
This is the only Thanksgiving that's ever mattered in Scotland because they made the World Cup. So the reason why that little boy didn't swear at Graham is because they're still basking in the afterglow of qualifying for the World Cup.
That's right, Joe. Nailed
That's
it.
Joe Lowry, how are you? Happy Thanksgiving.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving. I love Thanksgiving, truly. I'm curious, Ryan, for your family, because I know, Taylor, you still do sort of the traditional Thanksgiving fare, right? At least that's my assessment, but you do it in a more elevated way. I am curious, Ryan, what's your Thanksgiving spread?
Joe.
Like, are we going tradish?
Well-
are we altering? Tell me more.
Joe.
I already know about the bird, but listeners don't know about the bird.
Okay, well, if you were on Monday's show, Joe, you'll have
Oh,
learned
no.
my updates on the bird.
Interesting.
Oh, no.
Popeye's turkey is what's
yeah.
been on the table this year. We did the Bojangles turkey many years ago. They stopped doing it. Those fat cats at Bojangles decided it wasn't turkey time for them anymore. But Popeyes have taken the mantle. I can't wait to cut first slice into my fried Popeyes turkey. Hallelujah, Joe.
Okay, delightful, first of all. Very curious to hear how that is, because I do think turkey is it gets a bad rap because people cook it poorly. Turkey also is, at the end of the day, it's just a turkey. You know, like there are better meats out there. So I'm curious to hear how Popeyes does with it. Will there be traditional Thanksgiving sides around said Popeyes deep fried turkey, or are you just going wild?
This is where we deviate, Joe, because we do more close to sort of the British Christmas dinner as the sides. Your roast
Beans
potatoes,
and
your
mutton
veg.
or something like that.
That's right,
I was
yeah.
gonna say, what's the difference? Ryan, what is the difference?
Well, in America, they'll do have jellies. They'll have potatoes with marshmallows in them. Weird stuff.
Oh, that's Thanksgiving, right? You wouldn't have that at Christmas, though, surely.
No. This is Thanksgiving. Yeah. So there will be no marshmallows on our table, Joe. Let's say that.
So I still have no clue what a British Christmas dinner is, but thank you for the
No mac and cheese. No mac and cheese. No, those kind of things. I think.
Nice. Well, you're doing the thing of telling me what it's not, but I mean, I'll just leave it to my imagination. I'm imagining tomatoes and Heinz baked beans and ketchup.
Joe,
you know?
you're also calling out me, who has never made a Thanksgiving dinner or a Christmas
You've
dinner.
attended one before.
Attended.
You
yeah.
live in your home. That's
I do live in my home.
Do you, though?
Wasn't meant to be. Let's talk about Josh Freese, shall we?
Let's do it. Let's get to the USMNT chat, shall we? But not before we say Happy Thanksgiving to you, listener. And if you are feeling thankful for TSS, why not go to patreon.com/Total Soccer Show, where you'll get our bonus content, bonus episodes, bonus video, and access to our Discord server. We're all hanging out in there across the holidays and beyond. Thank you very much to everybody who supports us via that medium. It's time, Joe. It's depth chart time. Joe, before we get into it, how hard was it for you to put the depth charts together in each of these positions we're going to discuss?
It was hard until I settled on my approach, which is I went for Joe Lowry has just become Mauricio Pochettino. I've got a cool, crisp glass of lemonade without the sugar, just pure lemon juice, but I'm going to call it lemonade anyway. To my left, I've got everything that I love. To my right, which is my eye dominance testing machine. I'm ready to go. So I am pretending that I'm Mauricio Pochettino. And once I had to stop grappling with is this what I want? Is this what Poch wants? What am I going to do? All of a sudden, everything fell into place. Not everything, just some things. This was still kind of hard.
So you've ranked players, though, Joe, because that's quite disrespectful to regular players if you're ranking. Yep. If you're now Mauricio Pochettino, then, come on, get your act together.
Graham, I'm disappointed by that question. I'm disappointed with how you've started this press conference. And actually, I know we kind of have poked fun about Pochettino for that. I kind of love that he threw a fit about the first two questions of the press conference basically being about, well, how did you... This is not intended to be an impolite summary to our colleagues who do a great job covering the men's national team. But questions that were basically about, well, okay, all the good players are at home. How did these guys manage to pull this off? At least pushing back on that narrative, I think is great for Pochettino. That's been consistent messaging throughout his time in charge of the national team, or really since March onwards, is that you need to perform. You need to perform. You need to be in camp. You need to be performing to get minutes. And if you're doing those things, you're going to be in contention. Whether or not that's actually true is a completely different story. But it seems to be having the desired effect on these players, and I'm not going to complain about that. So anytime that you can message through the media to your players in a positive way, I'm all about that, man.
Yeah. And Taylor, before we continue, just to clarify, have you left Weston McKennie out of your depth chart because we already know what he can do?
Yeah, I'm going to leave him out of the World Cup squad. We know what he offers this team. He's a critical part that we're definitely going to involve, and we'll get him back in pretty soon.
Excellent. All right.
That would be so funny.
I'm back. I'm just imagining, like, the post-World Cup roster drop presser. Yeah. And someone's like, Weston McKennie's not here. And he does that whole bit again, just completely ignoring that he's not going to have this job after the World Cup. This is what it's all about.
Hey.
Oh, man, that's so funny.
Never say never, Joe. When the US beat Scotland in the final, you never know if Poch will decide to stay on for another cycle. It could happen indeed. Hey, Taylor, would you like to have the honour of kicking off our depth chart discussion by starting off with the goalkeepers position? Tell us.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess so. Matt Freese seems to be the number one. Had some very big saves against Philly in the MLS playoffs, and did sort of have the performance I wish we could see from him for the U.S., where he kind of stands on his head, makes some big saves, and reminds us all that he can be that shot stopper. But even so, he seems to be Pochettino's number one. And then there are others behind him. It gets really confusing for me, but I had it as like Schulte, Celentano, and then Turner, even though I'm not sure Turner is even involved in the conversation. You could talk me into Klinsmann. You could talk me into Koken. I don't know. There are a lot of options, but it feels like it's basically Freese, and then whomever is in the right form and brings the right energy gets included in the squad.
Okay. Graham, any thoughts on your depth chart and goal?
That's right. Taylor has nailed it, because how could we possibly make a judgment when we haven't seen anyone else other than Matt Freese play for like the last 6 months for this team? So yeah, he is by far and away the clear number one in this depth chart. It would have to be something major for him to lose that shirt. Either a couple, at this point, it feels like he would need like 2 or 3 outrageously bad performances for him to lose that jersey. Obviously, an injury would change this here. My number 2, I've gone for Matt Turner, despite the fact, I think with my rankings, I've sort of blended my own opinion with some of what I think
Is he
Poch
still a goalkeeper?
Well, not for the USMNT, certainly. But Poch doesn't seem to fancy him, so I don't think he has him as his number 2. But I would still. He's got World Cup experience. He is playing again regularly. And just fundamentally, I think Matt Turner probably is the second best goalkeeper of all the guys I'm about to mention. Number 3, I mean, look, you could go in any which direction after Matt Freese, but number 3, I've gone for Patrick Schulte, almost kind of out of personal bias. I've quite liked him in the past when I've watched him. Thought he was quite decent at the Olympics for the US, and I've liked him for Columbus as well. Number 4, I've gone for Diego Koken, just because if you feel quite good about your number 1 and number 2, I think you can quite strongly make the argument you bring him to a World Cup for the experience, has real potential, isn't a million miles away from getting onto the pitch for Barcelona. I don't know if that will happen this season or maybe even ever, but he's highly rated. And then number 5, I've gone for Zach Steffen, who has dropped out of the picture, but not so long ago he was in play for the starting spot. And if things had worked out a little bit differently before the Gold Cup and he hadn't picked up that injury, it might have been him that got that opportunity to show what they could do as the starting goalkeeper. So those are my top 5. But honestly, I could have had Celentano in there. I could have had Chris Brady in there. It's a bit of a blob.
The only lock here is Freese, right? For each position group, I went through and highlighted the players that I think will absolutely be on the World Cup roster. Freese is the only one. And then there's a giant question mark around who's next. I think Pochettino, in his mind, Freese is obviously that top dog. Chris Brady's been in a lot of camps as one of the 3 goalkeepers, so I think Brady could be, instead of Koken, that younger player who ends up making it to the World Cup. And then I had Schulte rounding up my top 3. So I had Freese and then Schulte, I suppose, and then Brady. And then the rest of my list went Celentano and then Matt Turner, because I agree. I don't know if Poch is going to bring Matt Turner back into the fold. If he was, it would seem odd that he didn't do it this past month. So I think that maybe means that Turner's not going to be there. And then I just want to bang my own personal drum one more time for Brad Stuver, who's not going to go to the World Cup. At least I wouldn't expect he would, but has been the best, one of the best goalkeepers in MLS of any nationality, and has been incredibly consistent for Austin since he signed ahead of their expansion season. I think Stuver should have already been in the picture. He can play with his feet. He's a good shot stopper. I think it's a missed opportunity. I think he could even be the best American goalkeeper right now, and it's a shame that we haven't gotten to see him. But it'll be Matt Freese and then a big old question mark.
All right. Joe, would you like to talk us through your centre-back depth?
I would love to, Ryan. I have 2 locks at center back. So my top 2 are Chris Richards, number 1, Tim Ream, number 2. Again, this is in the mind of Pochettino. I think there should be a question, especially after how well Austin Trusty played in that game against Uruguay. I think there should be a question of, is there another left footer who can take over Tim Ream's spot if needed at the World Cup? I think Trusty might be that guy. So I've got Trusty in the 3rd spot of this team in my center back depth chart. I've got Mark McKenzie in 4th. I've got Miles Robinson in 5th. Those are my top 5. I have a bunch of other names on the list. I can go all the way down through 10. I don't need to because there's no way we're going to see that many guys at this spot going to the World Cup. I do want to note, I don't have Joe Scally in this position group, even though I think Joe Scally may well end up at the World Cup. I have him down in my right back, so I did some double dipping, but not for the center back position because those roles have sort of been distinct under Pochettino of who's playing that right-sided center back role that becomes the right back in defense. But I've got Richards and Ream as obvious options here. I was really impressed with Trusty, a little bit less so with McKenzie, but I thought he was mostly fine against Uruguay. And then Miles Robinson in my top 5.
Okay. Taylor, what's yours look like?
Almost the exact same thing. I would put McKenzie ahead of Trusty, and I would put Miles Robinson ahead of both of them because I'm going more with a what I think Poch will do. And thus far, Miles Robinson seems to be a player that he has come to rely upon. Like, maybe he isn't going to be a definite starter, but it seems like he is at the very least going to be a squad player for this team. But that's kind of quibbling with details there because largely I think Joe has it right. With the only other thing would be that I included Joe Scally in this one. And I would have Joe Scally probably last on the list right now based on that performance. So I would go Richards, Ream, Robinson, McKenzie, Trusty, Scally.
Okay. Graham, where have you landed? And are we presuming 4 are going to be in the squad?
You mean in the full roster? I mean,
Yeah.
we're assuming it's going to be 26 players, right? I don't think the genie's gone back in the bottle since the last World Cup. I know the last World Cup, the reasoning was COVID, but I think that's going to stick around. To be honest, I haven't totally done the maths on kind of the breakdown of the squad. At least 4, certainly if it's a back 3 that the US is going to play in some games, at least on paper, and then maybe someone like Joe Scally or. I guess we saw Freeman in the last game play as the right centre backs. There's probably a bit of overlap there. Similar to Taylor, I don't have, or was it Joe? I can't quite remember. I don't have Joe Scally in this group, even though I do think he is certainly in play to play as like a right-sided centre back. But I've got Chris Richards as my number 1, clearly just like the best US centre back right now, the defender that you build around. I've got Ream at number 2. Has his faults, but I think he's the best distributor and like a natural leader and has experience, and I think that is quite important for just the team in general. Number 3, I've gone Mark McKenzie, is playing at a good level in Ligue 1, can play a couple of positions in the back 3 as well, played centre back in the last camp, obviously can play right centre back, which is where he plays at club level. Number 4, I've gone Noki Banks. He is just starting games for Augsburg now. He started and played 90 minutes at the weekend, a 1-0 win for Augsburg against Hamburg in the Bundesliga. Huge potential. Poch has said has the potential to be one of the best defenders in Europe. Is playing in the Bundesliga regularly. No idea why we didn't see him in the last camp. So this is one of those ones where I'm sort of imposing my own opinion here. I don't think Poch sees him as a number 4, but I certainly do. And then number 5, I've gone for Miles Robinson. Just I guess because we've seen him in and around this team, can play the right centre-back hybrid position relatively well. And then I look at some of the other options, the guys that just missed out for me. CCV is out injured. I think he will probably be fit again before the World Cup, but will be coming in green before that tournament without a lot of game time. And then I've gone Walker Zimmerman ahead of Austin Trusty just because at club level I have the most exposure to Austin Trusty, and as good as he was in that last camp, he's not been good for Celtic for quite a while. Like, even at the weekend, he looked quite ropey in some moments against St Mirren. So Walker Zimmerman is limited, but I think you kind of know what you get with Walker Zimmerman. And I think there are certain scenarios where you need to. What was the game he came on to sort of protect a lead for the last 10 minutes? Or even if you need him to be an emergency centre forward, which you hope it doesn't come to that, I do think Zimmerman has his uses.
Yeah, I will say, I do think coming out of the November window, center back is a position group that I feel slightly better about. Not dramatically better about, because Graham, you've done a good job of bringing me back down to earth on Austin Trusty. which is that he has some good moments and showed well in that game against Uruguay. He's still not very consistent. And Uruguay didn't show up for that game after it was 2-0 and maybe didn't even show up before that game went 2-0 to the U.S. So Trusty had an easier time of it than maybe you would expect in a game like that one against a good team. But even still, I think across those two games against Paraguay and Uruguay, the U.S.'s center backs acquitted themselves fairly well across the board. Miles Robinson, I think, though, still continues to struggle. And that's why I have him so far down on my list. I think Poch likes his athleticism. I think Poch likes that he can flex over into that right back, right center back role that we saw back in October. But he is painfully slow to recognize the Paraguay goal developing around him. And back in that October window, he was terrible at that right back, right center back role. It's not that he can play it. It's true, he can. But I could also play it, just to really sort of draw that out. Obviously, Miles Robinson would do a much better job at it than most players in the pool. But that doesn't mean that he is worth carrying because he has played that role before. My sense, as I'm embodying Pochettino, is that maybe Poch is going to see that Miles Robinson hasn't been very good for him in a U.S. shirt, and that's going to bump him down the list a little bit. Ryan, to go back to your question, I think the top 4 center backs that I have on my depth chart, along with Joe Scally, will probably be the primary center backs. I just, like I said, moved Scally into the right back conversation that we can have in a minute.
We've talked about Scally. Graham, you mentioned him briefly. Like, if I was going to include him, should I be including Alex Freeman? I feel like he is going to be more of a fullback consideration at this point, but obviously can play that right center back spot.
Yeah, that's why I didn't include either one of them, is because Freeman and Scally played the exact same role in this past window. Freeman's done it a bunch, even more than he's actually played as an out-and-out fullback or a wingback on that right side. So I think there's going to be a lot of tactical flexibility, which is part of why this exercise is difficult, right? Is that players can play different roles. It's not just the kind of thing that you build on paper, or if you do it with a lot of nuance that can be difficult to communicate. But I think Scally and Freeman today, by the way, if we are building out a World Cup roster, which we're not, I think both of those guys are at the World Cup, along with 4 other center backs that we sort of mentioned in the pure center back category.
All right. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at the fullbacks, the midfield, and there onwards. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to USMNT Weekly. Happy Turkey Day once again, listener. We go now to Graham Rutherford, who's going to talk us through his right-back depth chart. I'm assuming we've got a little Serginho Dest at the top, and then all others follow him.
That's right, and just purely on vibes alone, Serginho Dest is number 1. And on my list, I mean, I'm joking, but also not joking. Just a fun guy. I like him being in the US team, but he obviously back in the camp in the last window, not quite back to his best. Yeah, I don't think we saw him playing at 100% in those games, but we saw enough to know that he gives the US a completely different dimension on that right side, right, with his dribbling and the ability to come inside. I did really like that dynamic between Freeman and Dest in the Uruguay game. In the second game, I'd like to see that in another match in March before the World Cup. So he's number 1. I've gone Alex Freeman, number 2. Has huge potential, plays a slightly different role to the one we see him play for Orlando. I thought that was one of the most kind of exciting things about that game against Uruguay was we did see him unleashed a little bit more than we have seen in previous matches. The goal he scores, the dribbling goal inside the box is obviously a very fun moment. So and he can play as the right centre back, he can play a right back in a back 4. So yeah, he is. I think he's getting more comfortable with the environment as well. So he's my number 2. And then number 3, Joe Scally, even though in reality, in practical terms, he might be sort of a right centre back for me. Even though at club level for Gladbach this year, and it's potential that he could play as a right wing back as well. But I think he's part of the back 3 in my mind.
Okay. Ryan, I have a point of order question for you. Is it a missed opportunity by Graham to have said Dest is not quite back to his best and not made it Dest is not quite back to his Dest? That feels like it should have happened, right?
Or a Destiny play would have been appropriate as well.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate that.
I think that's
Thank
a
you,
point
Graham.
off for me. Yeah.
I have it as Dest. Then it gets a little hazy because I don't think Poch is going to use Scally as a right wing back, since we didn't see that at all in this camp, and that's when I thought we would definitely see that. So that has me scratching my head a bit, whereas Freeman, I think we do see some of that positional flexibility, and he uses him in different ways. So I did have Freeman in there, but I had Freeman 3rd because I had Tim Weah 2nd because that's where he is playing for club, and is I have Weah in 2 different spots. He's one of those players that I have at a couple different roster spots on this one, but is playing there at club. did score a goal this weekend from that spot. And largely this is informed by what we saw from Dest in these last two friendlies, being almost more of like a right midfielder at times in that 4-4-2 defensively, or 4-2-3-1, but still very much controlling that right side. And so I think Weah is capable of playing a similar role and doing a similar job. So I would go Dest, Weah, Freeman.
Yeah, I like that, Taylor. I like that a lot. We haven't seen Weah in that right back, defending as a right back role for the U.S. so far. We did see him, though, play as a left wing back in that was the October window, if memory serves. We saw him play the first game in that window as the desk role from this past window, where he is defending as a right mid and attacking as the width provider on that right side. And then the second game he played on the left side, both in wing back in both attack and defense, if memory serves. So I think that is very possible that we see that. I just had not considered that. This is, again, murky, right? And this exercise is a difficult one because we can call Dest a right back. We're coming off of 2 straight games, like the biggest sample size we have of Dest under Pochettino, where he just didn't play as a right back. He played as a right winger. So all these positions are a bit hazy. I also have Dest as the top option in this depth chart. Then I have Freeman. Then I have Scally. I think all 3 of those guys are going to the World Cup. Dest, though, to continue my lock syndrome here, I think Dest is the only lock of these 3, because it could be one of Freeman or Scally that Poch opts to take. Maybe he wants to go a little heavier in midfield. Maybe he wants to bring another center back and not just one who can flex in and out of that spot. I don't know. Dest, you'd have to imagine in one position or another will be at the World Cup, and then I've got Freeman and Scally behind him.
All right. Joe, how about on the left back position? I presume it's going to be Anthony Robinson and some understudies there.
Yeah, assuming Jedi Robinson's healthy, which is still a big question. I mean, there's a lot of time between now and the World Cup, right? There's a lot of time. But I don't know. I don't know what that's going to look like. But obviously, Anthony Robinson is the top option in this spot. Max Arfston, I think, is elevated to a lock status in Mauricio Pochettino's eyes. And I think it's kind of warranted at this stage. I've got Jedi Robinson 1, Max Arfston 2. Then I have Tim Weah number 3. Assuming Tim Weah is going to be at the World Cup, though I don't have him down as a lock, he might end up sort of maybe playing more minutes in other positions. So I do have John Tolkien as a next option in that group if Weah is viewed elsewhere by Pochettino. But I think it is Jedi Robinson 100%, and then it's Max Arfston 100%, and then there's a little wiggle room after those 2 guys.
All right. Taylor, let's explore the wiggle room.
Yep. I have it the same group almost entirely as Joe. I think it's Tolkien based on these last 2 friendlies, like almost exclusively compared to other players we've seen there who I have not enjoyed as much. But I have it as Jedi, Arfston, Tolkien, and then question mark Dest, question mark Weah, because I think both of them can play there. It just depends, to Joe's point, on who is playing elsewhere and who fits in the best. But I think we hope that Jedi stays fit and we start wrapping him in bubble wrap around March, maybe even earlier. Joe, where are you on that one?
I'm good for bubble wrap whenever. Like I'm on board. It's seemingly quite as desperate of me as 2022, but I'm still into it.
Gotcha. Yeah, and then Max Arfston if he can't go, and then after that there is the haziness. But I have Tolkien ahead right now, with Destin Weah in there too.
All right, Graham, what you got?
Yep, retweet everything that's been said. I've got the same top 3, Robinson, Arfston, Tolkien. I am becoming really concerned about Jedi. He hasn't made the field in 2 months, and so when I think of the way it's sort of panned out, where he's coming back and then he's getting bled into the Fulham team and he's playing 10, 20 minutes, and then he disappears entirely, and the lack of information is concerning as well. And I think of someone, this is a reference for me, but this happened with Aaron Hickey, and basically he needed to have surgery again because something didn't go right with the first surgery. That's where I'm concerned. Is Joe's right, there's a long time until the World Cup, but if he has to go through surgery again and then have a spell out, and then how much game time is he getting towards the end of the season? So, yeah, I am starting to contemplate what a World Cup game with Max Arfston starting for the US actually looks like, because I think that's becoming
handsome.
Handsome, yeah.
It looks great.
He, to be fair, the last few games he's also played great, so I feel better about that than I would have done in like September. But I'd still quite like Jedi to be playing soccer again.
Watch him do some 1v1 defending, and then tell me if you still feel great about that one.
Yeah.
You
wouldn't do that at a World Cup.
To be fair to the guy, he was pretty dialed in, I would say, in the Paraguay game defensively. Taylor, would you disagree with that?
It's still the
Columbus Cincinnati game.
Yeah, the Cincinnati
game. I know
game.
it is.
That was
I know,
just like,
every time you say it, I know that's what you're thinking of, and you're right to think of it.
Yes,
you're 100% right. Yeah,
That's-
it's nervy. I'm just less concerned each time I watch him for the national team. There are still obvious problems there. I think some of those problems can be mitigated by that pure back three against those sorts of teams. But yeah, you're right to still have your hesitations, Taylor. I'll put it that way.
It was Echenike, right? That was
Echenike just dusted him over and over again.
All right, let's move on to the midfield group. We're going to split out.
Ryan, you don't have any Echenike thoughts? You sure? You want to go to midfield? Okay.
I concluded them. Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna get to the midfield now. We're going to split out defensive midfield and central midfield. So Taylor, should we start off with the defensive midfield, the Tyler Adams zone? Let's do it.
Let's hope. We had the question about will any of the MMA midfield start at the next World Cup, and it seemed to be that we were all like, Adams, hopefully, if he's able and fit. But if he is able and fit, it is Adams. He is the lock there. And then it gets hazy pretty quickly for me because I think there are lots of different potential options. I don't have Christian Roldan here. I think other co-hosts might. So I have it right now as in that role, Adams, then Morris, Cardoso, Sands, and Zawadzki, based on what we've seen from Pochettino and what he's called in. I am very open.
A great shout, Taylor.
I mean, but then he will be dropped from the depth chart
due to injury,
as soon as the squad is called in. Yeah, of
Toenail.
course, that's how it
Toenail.
works. Yes. But I mean, I think you could talk me into other players right behind Adams because I'm not sure I love Johnny Cardoso, or in fact, I'm sure that right now I don't. And similarly, Aiden Morris, I think we've talked about at length how he hasn't really looked like he can do the job as well, the deputizing job as well. He can do it okay, but I think there are still some gaps there and some holes in his game. So I have him second right now, but I'm not sure Pochettino does or should.
Yeah, I think part of the reason Roldan has to be included in this defensive mid, other than that's the role he played for Seattle and has for the U.S. too, is that the other options behind Adams are not good. Right? I mean, even if you just think about this practically from Pochettino's perspective, Adams is a lock, no doubt about it. Morris has been bad for the U.S., at least in my view, and I think it's pretty clear that he's not been good.
I still
Go
maintain
ahead,
he takes risks that Pochettino wants him to take, and I think as long as you are doing what the coach asks, even if you don't look 100% excellent at it, or even 90% excellent at it on occasion, if you're doing what's asked of you and playing the risky soccer that he's asking you to play, then you are to some extent, I hesitate to use this phrasing, but following orders, and
Sure.
that can kind of keep you in the coach's good graces. I hear you, though, Joe. You want to see him execute those plays with precision instead of playing them to the opposition attacker 2 times out of 10.
Well, are you? So what I interpreted that to mean, Taylor, is that you were talking back about that U.S. Ecuador game where Aiden Morris gambles in defensive transition and gets bypassed. Are you talking about his play on the ball? Is that what you mean?
I'm talking about this past window. I felt like we saw on a number of occasions he gets the ball from Freese or he gets the ball from a center back, and he is trying to do the one-touch sort of reverse diagonal behind him to another midfielder or a fullback. So like ball comes in, he plays it wide right away, and then you can kind of get people to bite on the press. They think he's going to take an extra touch, and when he doesn't, now they're bypassed. And that worked most of the time. But as I said, every 10 passes, there's like 1 or 2 that he plays right to an opponent and doesn't really check to see if they're on his shoulder.
Yeah.
Tanner Tessman did the same thing. But both of them did it so automatically and so consistently. It felt like a thing that they were just being briefed to do, of play that ball no matter what. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But we've got to get the kind of automation down. And I might be giving way too much credit there, but that is what I thought I saw. And that's where I'm more flexible with Aiden Morris.
No, I think that's a fair argument. That's probably the only counter argument is he's out there trying his best. Poch loves that, right? I mean, that's kind of the summary of what you said, and I think that's fair. Poch is a guy who appreciates dudes that try really hard, and Aiden Morris tries really hard. Bless his heart. I have Adams. I mean, it's kind of what it is, man. Like,
oh boy,
Aiden Morris is great at soccer. I don't think he should be at the World Cup. I suppose is like kind of the TLDR. I have
You're
Adams,
talking to a Southerner. I know what that phrase means.
Yeah, I know. I've got Adams and I've got Christian Roldan as my top 2. Then I've got Morris because I don't think Poch rates Cardoso at this stage. Otherwise, I think you would have brought him back in already. Unless he's doing the got to give him every single chance to let Diego Simeone remember that he exists thing, which is very possible. But even still, I don't know that Cardoso is in the top 2. I'd be shocked if he was. And then I've got James Sands as my number 5. So Adams, Roldan, Morris, Cardoso, Sands. I think of those 5 players, the first 2 will be at the World Cup, Tyler Adams and Christian Roldan.
All right. Graham, can we slide into your DMs, please?
Tyler, well, no, you can't, but Tyler Adams, number 1. For me, still don't think anyone can do what he does. Poch loves him. I think he's a lock. Christian Roldan is my number 2, so I've got the same as Joe. I don't really know in terms of profile, I don't know if the US has another player like Christian Roldan, someone who can, like, in that deep line position, put their foot on the ball and dictate from deep. And so in the last 2 or 3 windows, I think he's, even when he's not played that well, just the fact that he stands out in that sense, I think makes him my number 2. Number 3, I've gone for Johnny. I know, I am well aware. Johnny number 3 seems exceptionally high. I cannot shake this idea that if the US has to bunker and protect something in a game against an elite level opponent, and you basically just want destroyers in central midfield for a game state thing, there might be a role there for Johnny Cardoso. We've never seen him perform for the US, I kind of. Joe, why do you think Poch doesn't like Johnny just because he wasn't called up in the last game? He's still got an injury, right?
He's been back on the bench for Atleti, and Poch hasn't called. So that could be one of two things. Poch doesn't want to call, or Poch thinks it's better to leave him at Atleti because that's what he does. So I don't know which of those things it is. I'm just swayed by the fact that when Cardoso has played for the U.S., he's been bad, and every time I've watched him, pretty much he's been uninspiring. Plus, Poch hasn't been calling him in. That tilted the scales for me.
Is it possible that Poch is calling in like a player with a different name that he thinks is Johnny Cardoso? Like, has he been calling in like John Cards and doesn't understand because he just doesn't know his name? That feels possible to me.
I think in the U.S. soccer spreadsheet, Sean Zawadzki's name is next to Atletico Madrid, and he's gotten confused.
There it is.
And that's the thing.
That's it.
Yeah.
Easy mistake to make. That's understandable.
We've all been there.
So I've got Johnny number 3, Aidan Morris number 4, and James Sands number 5. I realistically think the top 2 are the only ones out of that group that are going to the World Cup once you factor in the centre mids that we've all got as well.
Okay. Well, let's get to that, Graham, the central midfield. I am on the edge of my seat for where Yunus Musa comes on these depth charts. Let's go.
Really?
On the edge. He comes on the edge of mine. I'll just say that
you'll be waiting. You'll be waiting for at least a few names in my list. So number 1, Weston McKennie. I know there's a big old question mark around Weston McKennie in terms of how does Poch really view him, or what does he really think of him? But as an all-rounder, I'm not sure there's another midfielder that's on his level. He's got good versatility. Even within that midfield unit, he can be part of the double pivot, or he can play higher as one of the dual 8s, or if you need him to, you can play him out wide. You can even play him as a fullback, as we've seen for Juventus. So he's my number 1. My number 2, and I might not have said this like a couple windows ago, but my number 2 is Tanner Tessman. I think he's good on the ball. He's got good physicality. I think he's really growing into that central midfield role under Pochettino as well. Number 3, and again, this might be recency bias. I might not have said this, forget the last 2 windows, I might not have said this like a couple of weeks ago. Sebastian Berhalter is my number 3, mainly for his set-piece ability, where that is just such a useful thing for the US to have in matches. We saw that over the 2 games. My number 4 is Yunus Musa. Don't feel great about that. That's kind of a pick based on past performances and past beliefs of what Yunus Musa used to be. He's not in a great place right now for club or country. And number 5, I've gone for Jack McGlynn. For many of the same reasons that Sebastian Berhalter's on this list for me. It's just right now his stock is lower than Berhalter's. And look, I'm checking my own recency bias here, because a couple of windows ago I might have had those 2 guys flipped. I might have had McGlynn as my 3 and Berhalter as my 5. But that's how my top 5 looks.
I think that's a good reminder, Graham, of how tight this all is. You know, I honestly don't think there's a lot that separates a McGlynn from a Tessman, or a Tessman from a Berhalter, or a Berhalter from a Roldan. I think those guys are all fairly tight right now. My list, I went with Weston McKennie in this group, even though deep down in my heart of hearts, I think the U.S.'s most likely box midfield for their World Cup opener is Adams and Roldan as the double pivot, and McKennie and Pulisic as the 2 attacking midfielders. Truly, that is what I think is the most likely. But a lot can change still between now and then. Either way, I did go with McKennie deeper because I still think there's a chance that happens, and it's a natural place for him to be, although I've got him again later in a different spot. I've got McKennie 1, Roldan 2, Tessman 3, Berhalter 4, McGlynn 5, and Yunus Musa waving from beneath the top 5. I think Musa is just not rated by Poch. I think it's that simple. Musa decided to sit out the Gold Cup. I don't imagine that Poch loved that, and he's also not playing, and not playing especially well when he does play. So it's a defensible move from Pochettino. Musa has not really developed a ton since he left Valencia.
So what was yours again, Joe? McKennie, Roldan, Tessman,
Berhalter, and then McGlynn.
Okay.
Yep.
And Graham, for yours, I'm assuming that's just a position groups thing. But
yes,
like if push came to shove, And we have like McKennie is playing elsewhere. Tessman is hurt. I'm assuming. Would you go Roldan over Berhalter, or would you start Berhalter with Adams?
I agree with what Joe just said. I think if gun to head, I think at the first game of the World Cup it'll be Adams, Roldan, and then McKennie higher with Pulisic. So it's a position group thing that I've got my rankings like this.
Man, that's tricky. Okay, I'll follow. McKennie, Roldan, Tessman, Berhalter, whomever is basically the list I'll go with then. I think I had Tessman above Roldan at first, but I think it does feel like that's not the order that Poch would go with based on what we've seen so far.
Okay. And are we thinking the top 3 of those are in the roster?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, with a little doubling up in different spots, maybe you could have another guy deeper, but I think we will probably see a couple of defensive midfielders and then 3 or 4 central midfielders, depending on how you view McKennie, maybe.
If he doesn't call him McKennie, if that truly were a thing that he's left off the roster, that has to be personality and behavior, right? Like there has to have been incidents, an accumulation of incidents, because there's no way you can argue that he doesn't make this team better in at least a position. So that would be
at least 2 positions, I think.
Yeah, agreed.
100%.
Maybe goalkeeper.
Never say never.
Never say
it's
never.
the one spot on his who scored graph that's left unfilled. That needs to happen. Some manager at some point in his career has to do that purely for the completion of his who scored graph.
He strikes me immediately as I'll go in goal guy. Like if you just got to have somebody like jump into play, like if you're doing pickup or whatever. But then there's also part of me that wonders if he's the opposite. Is he I'm not going in goal? Like, nah, man, I'm running midfield. Somebody else go in goal. Like, I could also see him be a little bit trash talky.
Yeah,
I think it's the first thing.
Yeah.
But I could also see him be like, Des, get in goal.
Fair enough. All right, one more quick break, guys. When we come back, we're going to go into the final third of the field, our final third of the field, with our attacking midfielders and our strike force. Join us then. Hey, Total Soccer Show, welcome back to USMNT Weekly. Taylor Rockwell, let's get to our attacking midfield / wide midfield group, the Pulisic zone, shall we call it? What you got in your depth there?
Well, first of all, I separated this into 2 positions I'm now realizing, like left and right. So now I'm trying to consolidate my list into how I think it's going to look, which might indicate that I'm stalling for time. And
no, left
and right.
Do your left and right. I'm interested, Taylor. How do you have it broken down?
I have it left side as Pulisic, Luna, and then I think Aronson, Reyna, Timothy Tillman. And then right side would be Malik Tillman, McKennie, Reyna. And then it gets confusing because like it could be Weah, it could be Zendejas, it could be McGlynn in there. I feel like we've seen him played in more advanced positions at the U.S. on occasion. But if it's basically, if I'm going to go like 3 each, it's probably Pulisic, Luna, Aronson, Tillman, McKennie, Reyna.
Okay. No Weah. Did you miss Weah in that bunch?
Oh yeah, I have him in there too. I have him in there as an option on both sides, and then also as a fullback. Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, Joe, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of these guys that are going to be at the World Cup. Ultimately, is what I'm thinking. So doing just 5 is difficult. Here's my top 5 though. I have Pulisic, who I think is absolutely a lock. McKennie, who I still think is a lock for the World Cup, although we don't know where he's going to play. Gio Reyna's number 3 on my list, man. I didn't think we'd be coming out of the November window with that being the case. I thought it was far more likely that we'd be coming out of the window going, well, Gio played 10 minutes. He looked really good. He always looks good when he's on the field. Is that enough for Pochettino? I don't know. Well, it seems like we got a lot more of Gio than that. We learned a lot more about how Poch rates Gio. I think there's a real chance if anything's going to disrupt my midfield foursome that I mentioned earlier, it's that Gio Reyna is going to play his way into a starting spot, which he should. If he's healthy, that he should be in the starting lineup. So Reyna is in my 3 spot behind Pulisic and McKennie. Then I've got Malik Tillman, and then I have Tim Weah. I think we will see more than just those 5 players at the World Cup. I think there's a real chance we will see even 2 of the 3 of Luna, Aronson, and Zendejas. I don't know what order that's going to be. I think Luna probably makes it. But if I'm going top 5, Pulisic, McKennie, Reyna, Tillman, and Weah are my top 5.
Okay. Graham?
So I've got a consolidated list like Joe. Pulisic is number 1. Number 2, I've gone for Malik Tillman. I think he's a good fit for one of the 2 number 10 positions. Good versatility. Can play in central midfield or out wide in a 4-2-3-1. So he's my number 2. Number 3, I've put Tim Weah as my number 3, but frankly, that's because I felt like I had to put him somewhere in this roster. I've not sort of doubled up in positions. So he's a player who I think his stock is definitely down recently. And I'm not totally sure what his role is in this new system, because I think in theory, yes, the wing-back thing might work because it's what he does at club level. But when we've seen it for the US, it just hasn't been good. He's my number 3, but mainly because I just think he is a good player. I need to put him somewhere, but I have big old question marks about Tim Weah. Number 4, I've gone for Diego Luna. I think I'm a signed up member of the Diego Luna fan club. I think he's always quite consistent in terms of what he offers. I also think Poch values him as like a culture setter. I think he was one of the first players to help him in that regard. And I think, like, personally, I've become more mindful of that recently, especially in international football. I think I was quite dismissive of things like that in the past, and so I think this whole Poch process has really reminded me of how important that stuff is. And then number 5 is Gio Reyna. He would not have been in my top 5 a couple of weeks ago. I was pretty certain he was not going to the World Cup. We were not going to see him in a Poch squad. He was out of the picture entirely. But I just can't ignore what he did in the 2 November games. And if he is truly back, he's my number 2 on this list. I just can't, in good faith, make the argument like 2 weeks ago of all the concerns about Gio Reyna, and then in the space of, what did he play in the first game? Did he play 70 minutes in the first game and then like 20 minutes in the second game? So we're talking like 90 minutes accumulatively. I just can't like flip as quickly as that.
Hey, Graham, that's basically more minutes than he's played all year long. So that's huge. It's a huge chunk of the sample
That's
size.
true. Well, what I'm saying is, like, Joe, you have been much more consistent than me on Gio Reyna, so I feel like you, in good faith, can have him 3. I just can't, I can't flip my argument that quickly. So I'm just holding myself back a little bit. Yes, he's in my top 5, but I still have questions about Gio Reyna. But if we see the Gio Reyna we saw in November, he's like top 2 or 3.
And then if you're adding one more, Graham, if you're going to make it 6, would you put McKennie in there, or do you, because you have him in a different position group, are you throwing a different name?
Well, this is tricky because I think, as I said earlier, I think McKennie probably will start as one of these players.
Yep.
So I would probably have him as my 2, actually. The other players that are close to this group are, I think, Brendan Aronson. I feel much better about him more recently. I think he's playing relatively well for Leeds and has looked pretty decent for the US as well. And then Zendejas, if it is this sort of dual 10s system, I think he's well suited for that. So those are the 2 players that, to Joe's point, like, all these guys could be going to the World Cup.
Totally.
It's quite a large group.
There's a lot of good players in this tier. Sorry, Taylor. There's a lot of players that if you tell me, okay, this guy's playing 30 minutes off the bench in a World Cup game, I'm not upset about it. Not especially upset about it. Now, there's a fewer number of players that I feel great about starting a World Cup game. But I think if you're looking for where the depth is, the real depth is, and the real quality is in this U.S. pool, it is in that attacking midfielder, like narrow winger position group. And that is encouraging, especially with Gio coming back and popping into these spaces. I wanted to ask a question about Weah. Would anybody be surprised if Tim Weah didn't make the World Cup roster?
I'd be surprised.
I think I'm warming to that being a real possibility here where Weah gets left at home.
I would be very surprised if he doesn't make the roster. What I think he will be is honestly like similar to what Gio Reyna was told his role would be in 2022, and I would hope that Tim Weah handles it better. But like a point we've all kind of hit upon is that he doesn't really fit one position really well with what Pochettino seems to want to do. It seems like the one he fits the best at this point is the role that Dest is playing. And I think Serginho Dest does that better. So I think Weah is if Dest can't go, if Jedi can't go and Arfston is hurt or looks bad, maybe we slide Dest over and then Weah is your right back, or maybe Weah's the left back. But maybe he is like playing as a striker if somebody's hurt. Maybe he's playing out wide on the wing if we need more attacking creativity in the final 20 minutes. If we need to see a game out, maybe we use him to stretch a defense and sort of be a counterattacking threat. Like I think you could see him used in a lot of different ways, but I think ultimately he is getting like 20 minutes a game at the World Cup instead of being the automatic starter I assumed he would be.
Yeah, and I think that point, Taylor, about stretching an opponent, like he's one of the few sources of verticality in this squad, and for that reason, I would still bring him along. But similar to what I said about Johnny Cardoso being sort of like a game state option, that's sort of how I think of Tim Weah right now. He's not someone that I'm looking at and thinking he's going to start for the US at the World Cup if everyone is fit and everyone's available.
And of this position group, 5 players, if my math is correct, will probably be going.
Yeah, again, it gets murky. If you toss McKennie in, I think it's possible you could see 6 or 5 if you take McKennie out and make him a center mid purely. Okay. But yeah, a lot of these dudes I think are going to be at the World Cup.
Very good. All right, our final position group, last but not least, the strikers. Taylor, where's old Joshy Sargent on your list? Is he? Hey.
Peripheral. That's where he is. Right now, certainly based on recent results. Balogun, right? Pepe. That would be my first three. I guess Big Pat 4. How are we feeling about that? And then it really does kind of open up from there. And I think based on what we've seen from Pochettino and what he has done and who he has called, I think it might be Brian White and then Josh Sargent. I am open to other thoughts, but if I'm going 5,
That's exactly how I have it.
Okay, there we go. Balogun, right, Pepe, Big Pat, and then Brian White as your
Okay.
No movement on that. I mean, I think it's going to be Balogun, right, and Pepe, isn't it? I mean, I would be really surprised if it's not. I suppose Poch could think that Wright and Pepe are a bit redundant. They're both are sort of slashers who are better running in behind the opposing back line and getting onto the end of service. Though I think Haji Wright's hold-up play has improved, and Pepe's has too as he's matured as a player. But maybe Ajiman gets in as the Graham Ruthven snow globe. We want to do something different for the last 20 minutes of a game. I think that's still a real possibility. So I shouldn't be so dismissive. But I think it's pretty clear that Poch has Balogun 1, Wright number 2, and I think it should be Pepe, but maybe it's Ajiman that edges him just a bit.
Okay. Graham, you concur with this as well?
Yeah, I think it's funny how his group sort of firmed up so quickly, where it felt just all so fluid. And now, I mean, we can quibble about the ranking with the exception of Balogun, who's the clear number 1. We can quibble about 2 to like 4 after that, or maybe even 5. But I was trying to think, who are the players who could get hot and force their way into this equation? I'm struggling. Like, is there anyone like Damien Downs? If he has what would he need to do to really push himself up this order? He'd need to be scoring like 30 goals or something in the championship, and I just don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, not have his manager being like, yeah, he doesn't really know how to play soccer. Like, that has not been a great look for him, that his manager's routinely like, yeah, he's got a long way to go before he's at the level we need him to be. I think that's a big part of it.
It's wild that Damien Downs has gotten as much run with the U.S. as he has. Like, there's no way. There's no way, and I think it is more likely that we don't see Damien Downs at a World Cup ever than it is that we see him at a World Cup, in 26.
No, I totally agree with that. Just the point I'm trying to make is I don't see how this group is being disrupted in any way. Like maybe injuries change the
injury
equation.
and Ajiman. Those are, I think, are the only two things that could disrupt it. Poch's love for Ajiman and wanting to bring a player of a different profile, which I think would be reasonable. I don't know. I know this wouldn't be a popular decision. If Poch leaves Pepe at home and brings Balogun, Wright, and Ajiman, I think that's mostly fine. I would still prefer him to bring Pepe over Ajiman, but I'm not going to throw a fit if that happens. So that I think if Poch decides that he wants a different type of 9, and frankly just a different type of player in his team, that's how Ajiman gets in. Otherwise, it's the 3 that we've said.
This Jordan P. Fuck erasure will not stand. I just want that on record.
Fair enough.
I liked him.
It's recorded.
He's still an active player.
But wait, is he an active player? I haven't heard his name.
I feel
in a
like I
while.
could give you 1,000 guesses, and you might not get it, because I don't know if you know that Tondela is a club.
Nope.
Okay. In the Portuguese top flight, he has 0 appearances. He is on loan there from Reims. How am I supposed to pronounce that French club?
Reims. Stade Reims.
Reims.
Yeah. Very good. Okay, so that is our USMNT depth charts. My final question for this episode, Taylor. What's Mauricio Pochettino's hardest decision to make for the roster cuts here across all positions? Where's the biggest decision, do we think, that's going to happen here? We can have a think about this one.
I think I don't think that there is like a burning decision necessarily. I think a lot of it is depth. Like rounding out who your depth goalkeepers are going to be, maybe that third choice striker. Though I agree with Joe, I think it's Balogun, Wright, Pepe. So even there, I don't know there's a ton of drama. I think the biggest one for me right now is where does McKennie stand in all of this? And if he doesn't fit, things lock into place, but also things get a little bit more uncertain at the same time. We kind of have more codified position groups, but I'm less clear on how exactly those work and how strong they are. So it's probably where does McKennie fit is the one. And then it is sort of solidifying some of the depth options at fullback, at center back, and maybe in midfield.
Yeah, I think for me, the hardest cuts are going to come in that half space spot.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Pulisic and Reina rising up the ranks here and coming back from the dead, basically, makes this even more the answer, I think. But you have Pulisic, you have McKennie, you have Reina, you have Tillman, you have Weah probably somewhere in there, although he could be out wide. So we can take Weah out of that equation. So you have Pulisic, McKennie, Reina, Tillman, Luna, Aronson, and Zendejas. That's 7 guys I think are good enough to be on the U.S.'s World Cup squad. I don't think Poch is going to carry all 7 of those players. Maybe he will, right? Because he thinks that McKennie can play deeper and Pulisic can play in some different roles, and maybe there's enough tactical flexibility to get those guys all to the World Cup. But I think that's where the hardest cuts are going to have to come, and a lot of the other cuts are going to be not super difficult to make.
All right. Graham, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think in terms of the team that starts, the midfield is where the biggest decisions are still to be made. Like, I think it'll be Roldan and then McKennie is in a more advanced position, but if you told me that was Tessman and Gio Reyna, I could buy that. I think in terms of, because of the way it's worked with like the dual 10s and the double pivot, I think that gives Poch more scope to bring more players. And so in terms of like the roster itself, I'm looking at the centre backs and thinking, especially if Poch views Freeman as an option at right centre back or Scally as an option at right centre back, then all of a sudden you're looking at one of like it's going to have to be McKenzie, or I'm trying to look through my notes here, Robinson, or Banks if he's in the picture. It feels like one of these guys is going to be left at home, and so I think that is going to be quite a difficult decision.
Indeed. And thankfully, we don't have to make it. That's on Mr. Pochettino to get that one right, and time will tell. There we go. That's our USMNT weekly episode. Listener, once again, happy Thanksgiving. We hope you have had or will have a lovely meal, maybe a nice walk with the cousins before the meal, so to speak. Taylor Rockwell, thank you very much indeed for your analysis as always, sir.
Oh, he's muted. We almost made it all the way through.
So close.
So close.
My pleasure. And Ryan Bailey, I apologize for being muted, but also I will advise you the veteran move is eat the full meal, be really, really full, then go play some tackle football, and it will work out splendidly for you.
Is tackle football like flag football, but with tackles? So real football?
Brilliant work by you.
I'm going to take that as a yes. Graham Ruthven, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ryan Bailey.
Joe Lowry, thank you, sir.
Enjoy your porridge.
Okay. We will. Listener, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this one. We'll be back on the feed very shortly indeed. Happy holidays, etc. and so on. Bye!